Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this is the podcast where we have covered every episode of the G.I. Joe Sunbow cartoon. We've covered all the DIC cartoon. We've covered Extreme, and I've also worked through the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Marvel Comics page by page, panel by panel, episode by episode. This show has Mystery Science Theatered them all. This is a watch-along, a read-along style podcast. So if you're hearing this for the first time, I urge you to go back through the archives. Check out the archives. This is a show meant to be what we like to call in the podcast trade evergreen. So, I'm not going to have the latest in breaking news, but I am going to have opinions on 40-year-old cartoons. So please welcome aboard all you new listeners and say hello to all you returning listeners. And get excited because today we're talking about the G.I. Joe magazine from the fall of 1987, back to a Joe on Joe Illustrated episode. And before we dig in, I want to start off with a little bit of business from last week. I want to thank everyone who shared hashtag #GetDan2AFF on social media, who checked out Dan Beals's socials pages on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Beelzebub. If you heard last week, it was a rerun of our friend Dan's episode that he did in probably 2018. And it was a DIC episode. It was written by new friend of the show, Michael Charles Hill. And we shared the rerun because Dan is a filmmaker. He's a writer, director, etc., so on and so forth. And he was invited to be a judge at this year's 2024's Austin Film Festival. And in order to do that, he's got to raise some funds. So he decided to sell his entire personal private comic book collection. So the Joe and Joe podcast stepped up and said, we're going to help you out. And as of this recording, we still have about 5 or 6 days left in all the auctions. But over there on eBay, at my Joe on Joe comic book eBay store, it's called JOJ Comics and More. There's links to it in our Instagram profile. There on eBay, we've got, I've spent the last week getting over 300 listings up. So in 1 week, that's a lot. It's me sitting, that is me sitting in my living room, but we're doing it because the proceeds from these sales are going to pay for Dan's dreams. Dan is really talented and we want to raise a lot of money. So that means the more books, the more eyeballs that we get on these books, the more people bidding, the more of you good listeners that go, hey, I really want a copy of the first volume of the Authority hardcover select collection, first print. I really want, what did we sell today? We sold a complete run of the Christopher Priest Black Panther books. We sold a complete set of Paper Girls hardcovers, complete sets of, I know Black Science is up there. There's, Dan was a big Valiant Comics fan. So I saved all those for last. Those are in the last couple of days. I believe they're going to be ending on Saturday and Sunday of next week, or this coming weekend, the weekend of about 21st, 22nd. But Dan was a huge Valiant Comics fan. So if you like this new era of Valiant, there's a ton of those deluxe hardcovers that are going up there. We had full runs of the Grant Morrison JLA moved. We've got full runs of Thor, the Jason Aaron Thor, a lot of new stuff, a lot of stuff in the last 20 years in really well-kept trades and all that stuff. So I don't mean this as a shill. We're doing this because we're helping a friend, realize his dreams. So we want to bid those up. So I know a lot of you listeners out there, you collect comic books, you love comic books. So please go check that out. And the reason I want you to share that on social, the hashtag #GetDan2AFF. One, we want you to follow him because he's a guy you want to follow. And two, that is at Beelzebub, BEALSEBUB. Two is from the people who do share that social. I will be choosing a random winner to get a copy of the 3D Joe's Digipack. I happen to have 2 of them in my possession because I don't pay close attention when I buy things online. And I have 2 of them. And I only need 1. And it's great. If you're not familiar with that, that's the G.I. Joe 4 Blu-ray set that Carson Metaxas from 3D Joe's put together that has all of the interviews, the long form interviews that he did with the original creators of the G.I. Joe line. So it's a ton of great stuff for G.I. Joe fans. So I'm giving that away totally free to one of you listeners. So go online, share that. If you're not online, I get it, and you still want to participate, I don't want to leave you out in the cold. So you can send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com, and I will absolutely put you in the hat when we randomly pull a winner in a couple weeks. Probably this time next week, I should have a winner for that. So pay attention and participate and help hashtag get Dan to AFF, because he's a super talent and he's a good friend of the show. So we want to help support his dreams. I know you all know what that's all about. Supporting dreams. Speaking of supporting dreams, man, that HasLab, we got the Baroness, baby. It popped, of course. I don't think there was ever really any doubt that was going to go through. That was all very exciting. We also had this week was Shirley's very excited about that. The Hasbro, what do they call it? Their fall celebration thing. I forget what they called it, but I watched the G.I. Joe previews for that. That was very exciting. They had the pre-orders up for, was it Leatherneck? And he was so great. That's the only one I can remember right now. Oh, there was Saw Viper was involved, and I forget who else, but that was great. So if everyone missed that, the pre-orders, I'm sure some of them may still be open. There's probably, I think there's a few that are sold out. But make sure you go to Pulse and check that out. It was a fun reveal. They did a nice job showcasing the upcoming lines, the figures from the upcoming line. And the tease was something about the Mass Effect or Mass Device. So it sounds like they're doing some Mass Device related classified scale, something or other. So that's really cool. We all love the Mass Device. I can't wait to see that. Yeah. So I also can't wait to see you all online. You can find me at Joe on Joe Pod. It's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Send me an email, like I said, to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. If you're listening in a podcatcher and there happens to be a review button there, please give me 5 stars. Give me 4 stars are okay. If you're going to go low, don't do 2 or 3. I would say just do 1. Like, just go for it. Like, why not? If you're going to get that picky, go for it. And, but yeah, leave a rate and review. It really helps. It shows the various podcatchers of the world that you're listening and that you care about the show. And then they say, hey, people are listening. They care about the show, and they show it. And we elevate the presence of G.I. Joe even more than it already is. And you can check me out. We have a Patreon page. You can help support the show there. Patreon.com/Joe Pod. And then make sure that you absolutely support our sponsors, the Movies in a Meal podcast. They have been our sponsors for a long time now, and they are fabulous. They keep these lights on. They and our patrons are absolutely vital to the show. And so make sure you listen to the Movies in a Meal podcast. This weekend, I was crazed with getting those books listed for Dan's thing. And I hit a brick wall on Sunday, and I'm like, I need to get out of the house. So I went to see The Killer's Game with Bautista. And I've got thoughts. Not a lot of them great. I think that there is in there there was a real stylish movie in the vein of like Bullet Train kind of stylish movie. And someone at some point came in and said, you need to add a love interest to this story. And then they forgot to re-edit the movie because all the fun parts were parts that had nothing to do with the love interest story. And then every time I went to the love interest story, it wasn't as fun as the Killing Game stuff. So just saying, Killer's Game, whatever it was. Just saying, I want to support. I'm a fan of Bautista. I like what he's all about. I like his work. I liked all the people in the movie. There was a lot of fun to be had, but I feel like this really smacked of a weird studio interference thing. Anyway, but this isn't the Joe on the Killer's Game. This is Joe on Joe. So make sure you give Movies in a Meal podcast. I'm sure they've covered it. And today we're going to cover the G.I. Joe magazine from the fall of 1987. Put yourself in those shoes. The Chicago Bears were running wild. William the Refrigerator Perry was showing up in your mailboxes. Like, the life was good, man. 1987, the Berlin Wall was about to fall or whatever was happening. I don't even know what was going on. But G.I. Joe, the magazine, hit. And we have a great, I believe it's Dave Dorman cover with Thunder Machine in full gear getting chased on foot by Falcon. So good for you, Falcon. Now, it could be that they're just racing past him, but boy, it sure looks like Falcon's chasing the Thunder Machine. Cobra Commander in his armor, so maybe it's Fred, I don't know, but he's in his armor. He's hanging off the Thunder Machine. And then Lifeline, of all people, is flying overhead in one of those battle packs, those like helicopter battle packs they sold. I never had one of those, but you guys know what I'm talking about, where it had the little, it was like a square box on their back, as a backpack, and then it had the little rotor that took them up. So they're highlighting that little toy in there. We've got a Chips Ahoy fold-in on the interior page there. I love fold-ins. I believe the guy that, and I forget who it was. Pardon me. My comic identification is very high. My Mad magazine identification is very minor. So I know all the big names, Mort Drucker and, well, I know Sergio Aragonés, of course. But I don't remember the name of the guy who did the fold-ins. But I know some of you are screaming at me now. I think he just passed recently. But what I remember hearing about the anecdote was that he got so good at those fold-ins that he could do them without folding them. So he knew what to draw and to have them match up without having to actually, draw, fold it, make sure it's right, draw, fold it, make sure it's right. Like that's how good he got at doing those fold-ins for he did them for 50 years or something. So God bless him. We got a Chips Ahoy fold-in. I'm here for it. Let's see what this would look like. It's a cookie that becomes a half-eaten cookie. That's what it is. Okay. Anyway, table of contents. Got Jinx headlining it. We've got... That's interesting. What is this? They've got a picture of what looks like kids in like maybe Nepal or something. Pardon me for not knowing what it is, but like there's no... Nothing. That's really funny. Nothing on this page tells you what these kids in very like Hare Krishna, or I don't mean to be dumb, like what do you call, culturally unaware, but literally there's nothing on here that says, like kids in India or kids in wherever hang out on the streets. So there's just a picture of kids in orange robes walking the streets. That's pretty funny. Of all the people that welcome you to this magazine this month, it's Gung Ho in his marine dress blues. He rushed back from inspection to tell you all about this issue of G.I. Joe magazine. They just got back from 3 weeks of training, but Hawk still wants us to look as spit and polish as possible. Well, that explains the look, Gung Ho. This issue joined the G.I. Joe team when we traveled to France to stop another plot by those rotten snakes, cobras in peril in Paris. We got some Halloween coming up. There's the adventures of Stephen Newman, who walked around the world. I imagine he took a boat at some point. Jinx recommends the in-action section, which is all about martial arts. That's pretty dope. And finally, we soared through the clouds and made a real-life Top Gun. So Gung Ho's going to shed these fancy duds and put on some comfortable fatigues, shirtless. Then he's going to kick back and read the magazine. So welcome, Gung Ho. Got an ad for the magazine in here. We got our mail call here. So as always, listeners, we're going to read the names of these. If any of these are you or someone you know, I need you to reach out. We've had some luck with this in the past in the comic book. So we'll see if this carries through in the magazine. Rachel Mirabal from Auburn, California. It was so rad when she saw I snuck my brother's first issue of G.I. Joe magazine. It's like she's sneaking a Playboy. She snuck his magazine and she watches G.I. Joe every day. So good for you, Rachel. Jeffrey Klein from Jacksonville, Florida. His favorite is Storm Shadow because he's a black belt and he hopes one day himself to become a black belt. Michael Miley from LA. He's 7 years old in 87. So 80's 44. So what is he, 44 right now? So 44-year-old Michael Miley, if you're out there still in Los Angeles, he's very excited to read about Joe Namath. G.I. Joe magazine. Jamison Foster from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He enjoyed the story about the Golden Gate Bridge. Ryan Magnon from Riverside, California. He really cares about the real life stories in your magazine. And Ryan is throwing out there, just ladies and gentlemen, he's saying he probably thinks he's the magazine's biggest fan. So if you want to throw down and challenge Ryan, you can find him in Riverside, California. Jimmy O'Connor out of Trenton, New Jersey. His favorite character is Falcon because Jimmy wants to be a Green Beret. Did Jimmy grow up to be a Green Beret? Tune in next time. Jason Lawrence out of Ferrisburg, Vermont. He likes collecting the magazine. The articles are super, and the games are neat. This guy wins the day because he says all the Joe guys are so cool, especially the fridge. I agree with you, Jason Lawrence. And we've got drawings here from Tino Valadez out of Cicero, Illinois. Represent Illinois. Represent Cicero. Home of Al Capone. Jason Gulick out of Rome, New York. He sends a pretty good, Croc Master with his crocodile, James, that's pretty good. And then Robbie Fogel gave us a Psyche Out. And when you think about it, that's a high degree of difficulty. There is a lot going on with that Psyche Out costume. And Robbie Fogel, I think, did a great job out of Naples, Florida. Good job, Robbie. All of these guys currently are balding men with pensions and high blood pressure. So the next page, we've got Pogo Ball, the hottest craze in America, but it's not called ball with two L's. It's there. I'm sure it's got to be for a copyright reason. They just call it BAL. So like ball, I'm sure it's pronounced bald, but like ball, like Pogo Ball. It's got to be for copyright. They're comparing themselves to the hula hoop. I do remember this thing though. It was a circle, looked like a planet with a ring around it, and you would stand on the ring and you would conceivably jump up and down like a pogo stick, but it's a pogo ball. I do remember those. I don't think they were successful. Next, we've got a commercial for Outward Bound, or an advertisement rather, for Outward Bound. This is for all you miscreants and troublemakers trying to avoid juvenile hall. You can go to Outward Bound. So next is the On Target section. We got a bunch of friends with funny animal noses on their face. And really kind of a dumb reason why. It just basically says, on Halloween, here's a quick costume. Get an animal nose and put it on your face. And you got an elephant nose. You got a kid who maybe is a dog or something. There's a parrot. And then there's a kid who doesn't have a nose. He literally has the front quarter, face, and claws of a lobster on his nose. And I'm throwing this out there. This kid's also a redhead. So it looks like the redhead becomes a grown lobster out of his face. That's pretty great. Quite disturbing. Because the other kids, frankly, they look like, if I were an elephant with a nose. This is if I were a half lobster man in blue jeans, this is what I would look like. We've got a guide to the fall's finest films. Oh, Teen Wolf 2, that's coming up. Jason Bateman of TV's Valerie, of course. Ruskies is the story of three kids who adopt a Russian sailor stranded in America. I don't remember that name. Whip Hubley. Oh, maybe I do. Leaf Phoenix, who's obviously Joaquin Phoenix from the Joker 2 and all that stuff. Leaf Phoenix is one of the kids. I think I do remember Ruskies now. Very vaguely. This is when he was going by Leaf. And here we go. Father-son body switch movie. They switch brains but not bodies, and like father, like son. Well, what's the point? Of course, that's literally a body. That doesn't make any. Here, let me read this. Through a very weird accident, a dad and his kid switch brains, but not bodies. In like father, like son. That's it. That's what body swap movies are. You swap the body. Your brain, your mind, your spirit goes into your other person's body. So yeah, they do a body. Who wrote this? JB, how dare you? Next page, on target. Fall means football. And they are highlighting the Super Bowl MVP Phil Simms, handing off to All-Pro Joe Morris. Okay, so we're getting behind the Giants this year. I don't think they won that year. I don't know. But that was Giants that year. That would have been with what's his name? The big cokehead middle linebacker who set the sack record forever. He was a mean dude. Oh, Lawrence Taylor, LT. That's right. We've also got an ad here for High Tops, and this is for Converse All-Star. And I'm sorry, it's not an ad; it's an article rather. But it's about your dad and your grandfather wore these Converse All-Stars. They only came in white and black, but now there's multicolored versions of them. So there's orange, there's blue, there's pink. I like me a good Converse. As an adult, I never had Converse All-Stars as a kid. I don't think they were. I think they were. This might have been the era maybe when they started getting cool again. For us, it was all Nike. I was Nike. I was a Nike guy. I had to have my Nikes, and probably paid way too much for them, especially for. But I was a Nike. I wore black Nike high top, black and white Nike high tops. Black high. I had to have black high tops. That was my jam. I don't think I'll ever do that again, but I did that for many, many years. Anyway, we got an advertisement here for the Mickey Mouse magazine. That's fun. We got Jinx living up to her promise. Got a couple page story on the martial arts, and within there is the G.I. Joe poster, and it is a full color poster of the events of the cover with a bunch of Joes, 87 Joes. There's Dreadnoks and the Thunder Machine, Monkey Wrench. Looks like it's a pretty cool poster, actually. So we got a story on the World Walker. Steve Newman walked around the world in 4 years, meeting interesting people, eating strange foods, and boy, were his feet sore. So this is very much Forrest Gump. So I wonder if Robert Zemeckis read this, or the guy who wrote Forrest Gump read this article. Maybe this Steve Newman is somehow, but this is where the photo comes from the front that we were confused about. And it was, they were young Buddhist monks in Thailand. And the word Buddhist was what was escaping me. It was absolutely in my brain. I was thinking like the Dalai Lama, and I couldn't think the word Buddhist. So it's a picture of these Buddhist monks in Thailand that he must have walked through. There's a cactus in the Sahara. He's a working farm in Morocco. So yeah, this guy walked all over the country, world rather. Peril in Paris. This is our story we're going to revisit in a sec. We got an advertisement for the Disney Channel. Kids Incorporated, KIDS. Good Morning Mickey. Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty. So that's just representing that they occasionally show movies. Mousercise. I totally remember Mousercise. We were big. Our house, rest in peace, man. Our house was big. Oldies just passed away. Richard Simmons. My mom was a big Richard Simmons fan, and so we were that. And then so when they did Mousercise, we were all up in Mousercise. Dumbo Circus. I remember watching Dumbo Circus and Welcome to Pooh Corner. I kind of hated Welcome to Pooh Corner. Just throwing that out there. So here we go. A big article on Halloween. Discussions of Michael Jackson's Thriller. And it's a history of various Halloween stories, like horror, like bad things that happen on Halloween. People that thought they saw ghosts. Of course, Nancy and Ronald Reagan, they've reported seeing strange shapes in the Lincoln bedroom. Those weren't strange shapes. It was a young Bill Clinton. Other famous people, including Winston Churchill, Eleanor Roosevelt, they claim to have seen something weird in the room. Former President Abe Lincoln just hangs around to make sure future presidents do things right. Abe, where have you been? Dreadful Dolly. Sometimes weird things happen. Oh, this is about Yeah, possessed dolls and stuff. When the children's dolls began to move, they knew their house was haunted. The dolls would change their faces, spin their heads, and sometimes jump off their shelves. A team of Ghostbusters, quote unquote Ghostbusters, was called and chased the mysterious spirits away, but no one ever knew who the spirits were. I think this story is talking literally about the Amityville story from the 70s. That's actually who I think they're referencing in this. Yeah, so it's just some story about some haunted stuff. That's fun. Code breakers, got football fumbles. The G.I. Joe team recently got together to pick their favorite football teams. They found they had all the team names wrong. So you have to unscramble the football names. The Washington Red Hots, the Denver Horses, Miami Whales. Oh, there we go. So instead of the Chicago Bears, they call them the Chicago Pandas. And there was another urgent message on this page. You decode it in time to warn Psyche Out. They want you to cross out every other letter and save the day. Now, whoever's magazine this was, I don't believe this is mine. I believe that I bought this one off eBay. How dare you? You wrote in this book. I'm just kidding. It says, Crystal Ball in disguise will offer military secrets in exchange for arms. Refuse him. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. So basically, whether it's Crystal Ball or not, it took Psyche Out. Psyche Out had to tell the G.I. Joe team to not exchange arms for hostages, to not do the Iran-Contra scandal. It took them a secret code to tell them that whether or not it was Crystal Ball, don't be exchanging arms for hostages. We got a Cobra search. Whoever's this was did this as well. I mean, this might have been me. I don't think this was me, though. Crocmaster, Big Boa. So it's all the 87 stuff, and it makes sense. We do get a subscription here today to the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe magazine. That's very exciting. Man, the Motu fandom is tremendous, man. I'm always impressed at how deep those guys go, and the level of detail that you get with the Motu figures coming out of Mattel and all that stuff. Every time I poke my head over there, it's just cool. It's just cool lore building stuff. I hope they feel similarly about G.I. Joe stuff too, because I think we do great stuff. We see great stuff coming out of the G.I. Joe world too. But man, I admire just the dedication, especially like G.I. Joe as a product. You know, it's had some ups and downs over the years, I think, you know, but at least we've had a couple major like Masters. I know we had the cartoons, but they didn't really go crazy. But there's just this there's this passion for Masters that I really appreciate. And the last page, we got an adventure with a Top Gun. So it's Lieutenant Brent. Holy cow, look at that name. You can't be serious. That's a human name. It's pronounced Hearn, sir. It is spelled Hrncir. That's a real name? Hearn, that's wild. That is a surname in search of a vowel. But hey, good for him. He's 23 years old. His wife Pam's also an Air Force instructor pilot, and he teaches the pilots down at the Top Gun school. They teach them 3 categories: contact flying, when you fly using landmarks on the ground and navigate; instrument flying, when you learn how to take off, navigate, and land by looking only at the gauges in the cockpit; and formation flying, which teaches you to fly very closely to other planes. They ask him, what did you think of the flying sequences in Top Gun? He said the flying was very real. The tension in the cockpit between the pilots was very accurate. When 2 planes are dogfighting, you're constantly straining to stay conscious and alert. It gets very tense. Now, they ask him what was one of his most tense moments in the air. He says, once during a spin, a student misapplied the controls. I had to take over and straighten out the plane closer to the ground than usual. We were pulling 6 Gs. That is, if I understand that correctly, 6 times. Well, they explain it right here, which just means pulling away from the Earth's gravity and feeling 6 times my own weight. Pulling Gs causes a loss of hand movement and also blurs your vision. It was scary, but we made it. I like the confirmation. Like, oh, we made it. Like, yes, you're here telling the story. But anyway. And the most exciting thing about being the problem is sometimes you can't rely on a book answers. You got to respond with split-second timing. So it sounds like this guy lives by the seat of his pants. I appreciate it. We've got final page here. Well, two things at the end of this. This is the inside back cover. Live the Adventure assignment number 2, Operation Space Station. That's exciting. Free game inside specially marked packages of the G.I. Joe team needs your help once again. Your first assignment, the invasion of Cobra Island, was a complete success. However, forces are back. They've taken command of the World's Space Administration's Orion 1 space station. Identify Cobra... On your second G.I. Joe adventure, to obtain your free game, see specially marked packages for details. So this must have been from... So when they say specially marked packages, this must have been from tie-ins that were on the G.I. Joe toys at the time. That's what this is tying into, the Live the Adventure stuff. I'm not familiar with exactly what that is. I'm sure all of you are and are mocking me right now. But that's what this is. This ad actually does a really terrible job of explaining that. Like, especially marked packages, but then packages of what? Like, seriously, I mean that. Like, cereal, packages of whatever. But that's exciting, though. And on the last page, Sergeant Slaughter. Wrestle with the best. Get an 8-inch Sergeant Slaughter wrestling figure. What? This is from that 8-inch WWF era. Everyone had the Hulk Hogan. I know I did. Where it's, they were big enough to kind of grip your hands around. They were rubber. They were all in like a very, very man of Master of the Universe pose. Arms out, everything. So this is for one of that. This is for mailing away $8 to get yourself an 8-inch Sergeant Slaughter. $1 per inch. Get yourself a Sergeant Slaughter. Eddie's disease. He says, quote, I fight for what's right. And what's right is toys. 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 All righty. So here we go. We're going to read Peril in Paris. It looks like it's an adventure. There's Gung Ho's involved. Crystal Ball's involved. Psyche Out's involved. Falcon, Lieutenant Falcon's involved. And the illustrations here are interesting. They look like they're done with colored pencil. They're not bad, but they're very... What would the word be? I don't know. They're not stylized like a comic. They're stylized like a colored pencil piece that you'd see in high school art class. And I genuinely don't mean that as an insult. I just mean that that's the vibe of it. Like you had a colored pencil. I don't know what the style there is. They're fine. They're rendered fine. But it's not, it's not like, you're not seeing like the illustrated adventures of the Joes. It's like someone got loose a pack of pencils. Anyway. Hurry up and wait, Fast Draw said to Gung Ho. Oh, Fast Draw's involved too. The burly Marine laughed. The two of them had been standing watch for hours. An SST zips us halfway around the world to Paris, France, at the speed of sound, and then we stand here and stare at a warehouse and nothing happens? We're not here because of the warehouse, Gung Ho said. We're here because Cobra's inside. Just hours before, at dawn, Cobra agents had hijacked a busload of 14 American tourists and brought them to this warehouse outside of Paris. The Joe team was mobilized immediately to do what they do best. Rescue the hostages and make the snakes regret crawling out from under their rock. Lieutenant Falcon was in charge. I don't get it, Falcon said. Why kidnap the American tourists when there are 100 top world leaders here for the summit talks? It just doesn't make any sense. Psyche Out, the Joe's resident mentalist. He's not a mentalist. Crystal Ball was a mentalist. Psyche Out was like a psychologist. Said nothing. He and Jinx sat motionless behind the barricade of the vehicles, staring into each other's eyes. Psyche Out was practicing reading the ninja's mind while Jinx tried to clear her mind of all thoughts. There we go. We've crossed the Rubicon, everyone. The Stein family of R.L. Stein fame think that Psyche Out was a psychic. That is not right. And we need an editor to step in here and fix this. Suddenly, the door to the warehouse opened up. Heads up, Falcon called. Cobra is making the first move. But Cobra didn't come out of the warehouse. Instead, one by one, the American tourists came out and started walking quickly towards the Joes until all 14 were safe and accounted for. Well, am I dreaming, or did Cobra just release the hostages without a fight and without making any demands? Gung Ho asked. It blows my mind, Psyche Out said with a shrug. Lieutenant Falcon ordered Psyche Out and Faster Out to search the warehouse and capture whatever Cobra agents were still in there. At the same time, Falcon, Gung Ho, and Jinx escorted the tourists to a safe house for debriefing. There, the shocked but happy Americans began hugging one another and talking all at once. One guy, in a Hoosiers t-shirt, spilled out the details of what had happened, described their Cobra captors. I wonder if they mean Hoosiers as in like actual Indiana Hoosiers or if they mean the movie Hoosiers. And then, after 6 hours, they said we were free to go, the guy finished. His face was wet with sweat, but he was smiling. Excuse me, a young man said quietly. He wore a knit shirt and blue jeans and aviator sunglasses and had a camera around his neck. Well, my name is Peter Haskell, and I think you should know that some brainwashing might have gone down while we were hostages. Well, what makes you think so, Mr. Haskell? Asked Falcon. Well, the guy called Crystal Ball, he interrogated everyone one by one, Peter said. But not you, Jinx asked. We didn't have time before you arrived, explained the freckle-faced young man. I overheard him talking with his leader. He said a post-hypnotic suggestion had been planted to assassinate someone. Well, who? Falcon asked. But the young man shook his head. Well, which hostage got the message? Gung Ho asked. But the answer was another shake. I'm sorry I couldn't help more, Haskell said, and walked away. Why is it your outline? Well, why do you got to walk away on that? Well, just then, Falcon's radio buzzed. It was Psyche Out. Well, the warehouse looks clean, Lieutenant. Too clean, Psyche Out said. Well, keep looking, Falcon answered. From the hostages' descriptions, I'd say you're looking for Crystal Ball and Cobra Commander. Psyche Out answered with a snarl. Well, that just makes me all the more eager to find them. Well, Lieutenant Falcon said, turning back to the Joes, we can't detain these people any longer because we can't prove they were brainwashed. Well, we can't just let them go, Gung Ho said. Well, one of them has a timer for a brain, and he'll kill someone when it goes off. How about if we let them go, and we go with them, Jinx said with a sly smile. Good idea, Falcon said. You and Gung Ho join the tour. What? Me? A tourist? Gung Ho practically shouted. Well, it's easy, Jinx said. Just talk too loud and ask what everything costs. With your mouth. You're halfway there. That's funny. Falcon watched as Jinx and Gung Ho climbed onto the tour bus with 14 Americans and drove away. Meanwhile, Faster and Psyche Out were slowly searching every inch of the warehouse for the second time. They've got to be here, Faster said. There's no way out except through the front door. Well, I've got a strange feeling, Psyche Out said. Suddenly, he began ripping up wooden floor panels like a madman, and there in a secret area beneath the floor were Cobra Commander and Crystal Ball. At first, they were surprised, but then Crystal Ball smiled. Only you could find me, he told Psyche Out in a proud voice. You must have sensed my enormous aura. That's very funny. That's not what I sensed, Psyche Out snapped back. Have you ever considered changing your mouthwash? Brr, brr. Quickly, Faster got Falcon on the radio and told him about the snakes they found. Faster kept his missiles trained on Cobra Commander and Crystal Ball the whole time. I like that idea. I have a missile trained on you from 3 feet away. If you try to escape, we will all die. Then, while they waited for Falcon to arrive, Psyche Out and Crystal Ball stared into each other's eyes. They were fighting a silent but savage mental battle with each other. Finally, Falcon showed up and broke the trance. He pulled Psyche Out aside to tell him everything Peter Haskell had said about the brainwashing and assassination plot. Well, have you been able to learn anything from Crystal Ball? Falcon said. Well, no, Psyche Out said, but I've got a hunch and a plan. It'll take too long to crack Crystal Ball, so I'm going to work on Cobra Commander instead. The two Joes walked back to the 2 prisoners. Well, whatever your scheme was, Psyche Out said to Cobra Commander, it didn't work. Don't listen to him, Crystal Ball warned Cobra Commander. All the American tourists are just fine, Psyche Out continued, except for, Peter Haskell. He got sick, so we're sending him home. No, Cobra Commander blurted out. Haskell must not leave the tour group before they visit the Eiffel Tower. Thanks, Snake, said Psyche Out. That's all I wanted to know. Falcon was on the radio immediately to Jinx and Gung Ho. Where are you now? He asked. We're at the Eiffel Tower, Gung Ho said, and you were right about the summit talks. This place is crawling with top world leaders. Whole limo full of them just pulled up. Tourists are going nuts snapping pictures. Where's Peter Haskell? Falcon asked nervously. Gung Ho and Jinx looked around. Well, front and center with his camera, Gung Ho said. He's about to shoot a Soviet leader. Shoot a Soviet leader, the words chilled Falcon, but Cobra Commander and Crystal Ball laughed. Stop him, Lieutenant Falcon shouted. Defuse him right now. No. The next thing Gung Ho saw was a blur of red flying through the air. Jinx was vengeance in flight as she flattened Peter Haskell with a powerful kick. Just knocking out civilians. Suddenly, the tour guide pulled out a Cobra automatic pistol, but with a kick of her powerful leg, Jinx made sure that the threat was short-lived too. Later on the jet, taking the Joes back to the United States, the team put the pieces together. Cobra thought it would be a great joke to have an American tourist caught assassinating a Soviet leader, Falcon said. The kind of joke that ends in a war, Fastraw said. But I figured that Haskell was the brainwashed tourist when he was the one to reveal the snake's trick. Crystal Ball tried to draw suspicion away from Haskell that way, said Psyche Out. Then Cobra Commander confirmed it when I interrogated him, the jerk. Hey, Jinx, did you figure out the secret of Haskell's special camera yet? It was some kind of laser weapon, Jinx said. It would have turned that Soviet diplomat into fried chicken in a second. But you took care of that, Falcon said proudly. Hey, what were you doing, Gung Ho? Sightseeing? Fastraw teased. What's that supposed to mean? The Marine asked loudly. Well, Psyche Out smiled. Jinx knocked out Professor Peter Haskell, and she neutralized the Cobra who was acting as the tour guide. So it sounds like you were just along for the ride, Fastraw said, poking Psyche Out in the ribs. Suddenly, Gung Ho pulled a camera out of his pocket. He said, "You're going to be sorry you said that," he snapped angrily. That's the camera, Jinx said. That's the laser camera. You asked for it, Gung Ho said, and before anyone could move, he squeezed the shutter button. A steady stream of water sprayed out of the camera onto the Joes' faces. Those souvenir shops sell some dandy toys, don't they? Gung Ho laughed, and he squirted himself in the face, too. By Megan and William Stein. Probably the weakest outing of them all. I will say this. I really, really like, and that's what's illustrated, Jinx kicking a total civilian unconscious. Like a victim, the brainwashing victim gets kicked in the face by Jinx. I'm all here for that. That's amazing. I don't like that they had Psyche Out as some kind of mentalist. I don't think his file card say he was a mind reader? I don't think that was the case. That's not great. Fast draw, weird. Hey, dude with missiles, guard these people. Like it's just, that seems strange. Again, they are, I'm sure they were given a lot of, write a story with featuring these characters, and so they had to make them all work. So that's fun. And once again, Cobra gives up their own plot. Like Cobra just shuts up, then these people get assassinated. Although I'm going to throw this out there too. This whole like GHO is like, okay, you were just kidnapped by Cobra. We do think there's mind control involved, and yet we're going to let you go free and continue on your tour. And we know that the tour is taking you to where all these diplomats are. I feel like tactical error. Just throwing this out there. Tactical error. And with this alongside the movie, every time the Joes go to Paris, they screw it up. I kind of agree with what happened in the movie. They should not be allowed to set foot in Paris ever again because they don't do a great job. They get people kicked in the face and Eiffel Towers knocked over. Anyway, that's a lot of fun. So if I got this in 87, I think it'd be all right with it. I wouldn't say great. Honestly, wouldn't say great. Not a good story. The rest of the content, not super Joe-centric. Although, cool, dope poster. Really dope poster. And a fun cover. But anyhoodle, enjoy. Thank you all so much. Make sure we hashtag get Dan to AFF. Let's get Dan Beals there. Let's raise some money and put some great comic books into your pocket. And let's make it happen. So thank you so much, all of you, for listening. All you new listeners, all you old listeners, everyone coming on board. It's a great journey. I appreciate you. There's 8 years worth of old stuff to listen to. Go back and give it a spin. And now you Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.